outside of, the promise of competence, because competence is meaningless when the direction of this country is controlled by two groups, one of which is competent and the other which is psychotic. Competence doesn't win that. Having the stronger grip does. So
Well,
I really hope they can like shore this up or like
well,
address. You know what I mean?
Dude, I'm
I
looking
I
at
do
these.
know it.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at these Fairfax numbers, man. Fairfax is like near DC. People who live in Fairfax work in DC. It has over 11 million people in it. 65% to 35%. This is much worse than what we had in 2020. My God, man.
Well, it's a clapback at who's in power, but I do agree with you, Vosh, that we need more. And we ran on COVID extremism. Basically, it worked in the California recall by saying Larry Elder's can be like Trump, anti-mask, anti-vaccine mandate. The problem is that the pandemic is behind us to some degree now. Only 13% of people, according to exit polls, voted based on the coronavirus. So we need to have a bigger message. We got a little screwed with our negotiations for the infrastructure bill. Imagine if we had that infrastructure bill done 3 weeks ago.
Oh,
I think things would be a lot better.
yeah.
Hello?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you loud and clear.
Awesome. Let me how can I put that I guess I'll just put in my title. I'm chatting with you. So have you been watching the results come in?
Yeah, I'm watching the results come in. I'm talking about the election. So I predicted at the start of the night that I thought that Glenn Youngkin was gonna win. The reasons that I gave was that I think that the recent polling indicates a major shift. I think that he was able to walk the fine line on getting Trump's endorsement to, like get his base up there while also keeping him at a distance while McCullen was unable to tie him too much to Trump. That McCullen's really messed up the messaging when it came to education and whether parents have a say in education. And that one quote he gave has been just destroying him since then. Biden's slipping approval rating. And I also think a lot of it has to do with the fact that once the Democrats won the Senate and the House and the presidency, that some of them got lazy. For instance, there was a poll released, an exit poll that showed 46% of the people who voted today voted for Biden, and 46% of the people who voted today voted for Trump, indicating, since Virginia went blue, that there's Biden voters who just stayed home today, and that we could have won if we got possibly those Biden voters mobilized, but they were too busy at brunch, and that's quite disappointing.
Well, to be charitable to those people, I think a lot of people are disappointed in what they've seen from the Democratic Party so far.
Fair
And
enough.
I don't blame them. I mean, Biden's approval ratings are low, but he's taken on some difficult tasks recently, right? He didn't have a transition with Trump. He's got the pandemic that came back at the beginning of July and started raging. And the Afghanistan withdrawal was messy, but that was going to be messy for whoever was in charge. And so his poll numbers are low, and the Democratic Party hasn't helped with the infighting with over the infrastructure bill. Though I think we're right on the cusp of passing that. I mean, just great news came out today with an agreement on Medicare drug pricing negotiations for the first time ever. That's huge. But if that infrastructure bill had been settled 2 weeks ago, I think we would have seen some different results. I don't think we would have won by 10 or anything like that, but I think we'd be up by 1% in the end because Terry McAuliffe, he was the biggest loser in all of this. He had to distance himself from Biden because of the low approval ratings. He had to
Well,
distance
but he
himself
was
from the
distancing himself
Democrats.
from Biden while still having Biden come down and make speeches for him.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not Trump. Like, he can't treat him like toxic. You know what I mean? Like, Biden's still good, but he couldn't go out there and say, look how great Biden is and look at all these great things we're doing. You know, he had to be like, look, we're not DC. We're Virginia, and I'm going to work with Republicans. And he really focused on like his time as governor previously working with Republicans. So I'm just saying he missed out on being able to say Biden's kicking ass and look at these great bills we're passing, you know. And when I saw the progressives fighting, I don't mean to blame the progressives here because they were pushing and smartly so. That infighting, Terry's the biggest loser in all of that, you know.
So the thing that I think is, so Biden has taken on, for example, he starts off his presidency after the with a transition that was kind of obviously problematic with Trump not really wanting to hand over the reins, and a transition that was not really, I would say, professional would be the most charitable interpretation I could ever give. Then the first crisis he has is an Afghanistan withdrawal, which is not great considering that there was no real way to win it. But he also did have a lot of management problems when it comes to that. There was problems with the withdrawal that he had. The most obvious is the air base that people point to quite consistently. There's also the callousness in which he dealt with the situation, where people were telling him that people were falling from planes, and he said, "Oh, that's 4 or 5 days ago," when it was literally just 2 days before. And could you imagine somebody saying that about, say, the the murder of George Floyd? Like, "Oh, that was 5 days ago," when people were falling from planes in Afghanistan. And he didn't, while he was able to pick it up and deliver one of the largest airlifts in human history, and I do think he would handle it better than Trump could have. I don't think Trump had the skills to. Ultimately, since Trump didn't handle it poorly, as if he was in office, the blame's going to be put at the foot of Biden, even if a lot of the problems that came up was because of the deal that Trump made with them and not having certain things clarified beforehand. But the big thing that is enraging me is the economy, and specifically polling on the economy. And the reason why is what we had was Obama, and Fluff, please send me the numbers on this again. You know exactly what I'm talking about. We had Obama recover the economy after the Republicans drive it into the dirt, and we have unemployment spike, go crazy. And then Obama brings it down through his administration. Through 8 years, he works hard to bring it down. Doesn't use all of the tactics I would have or everything but he does bring it down, and he recovers the economy. Then, after that happens, Trump gets into office and gets to claim the credit. And then it was at 4 points. I mean, let's think. At the peak of unemployment was at like 10 or 11 or 12%. If we're talking about 2010, 2009, where Obama inherited after the recession. And then he brought it down to 4.7 by the end of his administration. And then Donald Trump continues off of that momentum to 3.5 unemployment rate until he deals with COVID terribly, causes a recession, then passes the baton back to Biden. So what we have is Republican causes economic crisis, Obama has to clean it up. And then a lot of the problems from the economic crisis are then blamed on Biden, even though Bush caused it. What do we have here? Obama fixes the economy, handed it to Trump. Trump causes an economic crisis, but not dealing with COVID properly, then hands the baton to Biden. And now the polling shows that the Republicans are favored by Americans when it comes to the economy, even though they fucked up the economy again, then handed it to a Democrat, and now we get to take the blame again. It's just, it's a constant pattern we see historically. And I think, honestly, we could have cut through the culture war if we had "it's the economy stupid" argument, since apparently Democrats just are not great at fighting the culture war. But we didn't have that, and people didn't believe that we were the guys in the economy. They believed we were the guys when it came to climate change. They believed we were the guys when it comes to other issues, but not the economy. And that really angers me, because I feel like that should be messaging we have locked down.
Yeah, there was exit polls from today that showed 13% of people thought the coronavirus was the number one issue. I mean, that was the issue just in November last year that people voted on. And I agree with you that if you zoom out on the economy right now, we're doing great. I know people will roll their eyes, but just today, the Dow Industrial Average closed above 36,000 for the first time. So the stock market is booming, right?
We used to hear Republicans say that all the time. Like, "Oh my God, that's great." And I mean, there's problems with the economy. There's a lot of problems with the economy. But when we're talking about the progress that has been made since COVID to now, when it comes to GDP recovery and employment recovery and the Build Back Better and how it's working, even though I still wish it was bolder. And then you compare that to what we got before, and what we're seeing today, it's just boggling my mind. The big thing, though, it seems the biggest issue for voters was education. Education seemed to be the biggest issue for voters by far in Virginia.
This came out of nowhere the last couple of weeks, this CRT nonsense, the school board meetings. They had this Loudoun County issue with this guy wearing a dress in the bathroom and then sexually assaulting someone else at another school. I mean, this just galvanized their base. And a lot of it's built on fantasy, and we had no response. But I will say I'd rather this happen now than in the midterm, so that we can start pushing back on this CRT nonsense, because we can't just dismiss it.
We were supposed to win. Biden won that by 10 points more than what we lost it by what we won it today. 10
Right.
points moved. Now, you
Right.
could say maybe that's isolated because of the incident we're talking about and that motivated Republicans to get out. That's possible. But also, the facts around that incident are all over the place, where you'll see like
Yep.
stuff like the Federalist and all these other news publications saying trans like rape pandemic, and then you look at the kids like, wait, there's no evidence this person is trans. Wait, where's the evidence this person trans? Oh, non-binary. Okay, where's
Right.
the evidence they're non-binary? Oh, they wore a skirt. Okay, so
Right.
this was okay. Now we see what's going on. Oh, and where did we get the information he got a skirt? Oh, the dad alleged it. Okay, well, great, wonderful. But
Right.
once the narrative was caught, it was ran with. It was ran with. Steven Crowder was recently banned off of YouTube recently for the idea that there was a trans prisoner that raped somebody and then got them pregnant. Just completely made up story.
Jesus.
The correction system literally corrected the record, saying this did not happen. The policy that he is saying caused the rape is just completely not true. And just but once these stories are caught in the air, it's over because people hear it and then it's become reality to them. At least.
Well, and it was a real good issue for Republicans because it scared parents into thinking your kids are being indoctrinated with like CRT, and like nothing gets people more worried than about their kids. And so we have to push back, and we will. I'm confident we'll find a way. We learned our lesson with defund the police last year, and I think we're not letting that one run away anymore, and we're going to find something with CRT. But you know, when it comes to the economy, I'm with you. There are some problems, right? Supply chain problems, gas is high, inflation. And there's explanations for all these things, but that doesn't matter. It comes down to what people think and how they feel. And we need to fight back. We need to just not dismiss this stuff. And we will. I'm confident we will. This is a low point for Biden. I really think this is a low point. And Youngkin's going to end up winning if he does by like 1 to 3%. And I think once we get this infrastructure bill passed, which now they're saying by Thanksgiving, and it's got all these good things, like I mentioned, the Medicare negotiation, you know, we could talk about the stuff in it, but then we show the country we can govern, and we're out there showing them, hey, we did this. Then we'll move on to voting rights, which is what people elected us for. We'll move on to police reform, and there's a lot we can do with this stuff. And that's why I think the vote was depressed, because people are looking at the Dems, not just because the economy's hurting them a little bit, but they're also saying, where are you at on these major issues? Why are you dealing with infrastructure, man? We voted for you guys for some bigger issues than that. We're not seeing you on that. So I think we're about to show up.
I'm really hoping that's the case. And if you look at like the numbers for how people supported the American Jobs Plan, right? Which were the plans that like Biden was putting forward, right? The numbers are like just astonishing, right? You're seeing like support of like 75% for the physical infrastructure plan. You're seeing 70% for care and economy. You're seeing like 65% for American manufacturing. Clean energy, you're seeing like 60%. His housing plan is also around 60%. 64% for the clean energy. Actually underpredicted that one. You're seeing like massive support like across the board for what he's putting forward. The problem is actually getting it through and getting it done, because we have certain Democrats who don't want to do this through reconciliation, and the fact that it's getting extremely difficult to get Republicans on with the bold initiatives that we need to get through to recover our economy in a post-COVID world and just deal with like the issues of climate change, for example, or with our infrastructure. And so we're getting, I would say we're getting good stuff. And stuff, maybe if this was another year, I'd be like, wow, this is great stuff. But we're in an age of crises. And I guess people are wanting more, and they're wanting stuff to be decisive. And with everything that's being held up right now, I mean, saying do nothing Democrats when we've had these negotiations for so long and we haven't gotten the stuff through yet. I mean, I guess that type of messaging is going to work.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bit of chaos in the Democratic caucus right now. We're working through it. This is what legislating looks like, right? Republicans had a legislative graveyard in the Senate for 4 years. This is what legislating looks like. You fight and you iron stuff out at the end, and in the end, it's going to be a good bill. It's going to be decent. But we just have to start focusing on some of these other issues. And for example, paid family leave got taken out. And that was a big deal. That was a big centerpiece of the infrastructure bill. Well, Joe Manchin was saying, I think we can get this done on a bipartisan basis because there actually are some Republicans out there that are wanting to see some sort of paid maternity leave or family leave. They have some different ideas how to pay for it, like you have to pay the money back or you borrow from Social Security, something like
Oh,
that.
I
But
hate that. That stuff is
of
so.
course,
It's
of
not paid. It's
course.
not paid leave. Then it's not even paid leave.
Well, but the thing is, there's like 5 million women that are not in the workforce right now because there is no paid maternity leave. We're one in 6 countries in the world that doesn't have this. We're getting left behind, and so Republicans recognize that, and so I think there's a chance for a bipartisan deal on something like paid family leave moving forward. So I try to look for the silver lining.
I mean, when it comes to paid family leave, I mean, Trump endorsed paid family leave on the campaign
Yeah.
trail, and then he dropped it immediately. And he
Yep.
didn't do anything during his administration. And so that was the chance where I could have maybe seen bipartisan consensus, because the Democrats would have voted for a paid family leave bill in a heartbeat, even if it was a minuscule anything. Literally, could have been a
Yep.
month and they would have voted for it. And they did nothing. And so
Yep.
maybe you can pick up 1 or 2 or maybe 3 Republicans, but we couldn't even pick up Joe Manchin on the paid family leave. And so if we can't pick up Joe Manchin, how are we going to pick up like Mitt Romney?
Well, again, I'm not here to stand for Joe Manchin as much as people think, but I just look at the reasoning, and what he said was, I don't want to do this under budget reconciliation. I want to do it. I think we can do it on a bipartisan basis. Take that for what you will, but that's what his reasoning was.
I understand the reasoning, right? But we also need to realize that we have a legal processes to do this, which has a historical consensus. We're not necessarily breaking with historical tradition by doing it. It's not like we're widening the Supreme Court or anything by going through budget reconciliation. So I don't really see what the problem is. Most certainly when I know for a fact that the Republicans would have done the exact same thing if they were in the exact same position. And these things are necessary for us to widen our margins of victory in 2022. It was necessary. I guess it most certainly now, post Virginia election, was most certainly obviously necessary for us to win this in Virginia. And we won a majority in Congress. We won a majority in the Senate. We won the presidential branch. I understand that we want to be bipartisan, but if the other side of the aisle does not want to be bipartisan, while they're, denying that we even won the election, how are we going to get them to work with us after we win an election that they even deny we win? I mean, we're in a position here. We don't have many options, so we should take the option that's available to us.
Yeah, I agree. But I also point out that 19 Republican senators voted for the infrastructure bill, and I think that's almost half of their caucus. And I'll be surprised to see how many of them vote in the House too. I mean, so I do think there is opportunity there. Now, is it a winning strategy? That's another story, right? A lot of times, like you said at the beginning of this conversation, Democrats take on things that aren't politically popular in order to help the country, and Republicans don't seem to have the same mission in life. But that's kind of where we're at. Like Biden's trying to bring down the temperature in the country with bipartisanship. It's also, I'll say, Dylan, we also have to show the world that democracy works. If we can't do it here, who are we to go around the world and say, don't have a strong man leading your country? Because there is a case for some authoritarians getting some stuff done out there, and compared to us fighting on Facebook all day long.
I do think that we do need to be democratic, but when we have the results of a democratic election where we won the Senate, we won Congress, and we won the presidency, right? After 4 years of the other guy, is it us that is stopping democracy by us taking our mandate and delivering upon it? Or is it the Republicans who are doing everything to undermine the fact that we even won in the first place? I agree that we need to show the world that we are a democracy, but the problem is one of the parties can't even accept defeat. And it's hard for democracy to function when one of the parties can't accept an L, right? So I understand what you're saying, and that we need to have some bipartisan consensus, and I'm fine with bipartisanship where we can find it. But we're not reconciliation is not breaking the historical trend. This is nothing new.
I disagree with Manchin, and I would have liked to see paid family leave. We got down to 1 month, but it was kind of innovative too. It was beyond maternity leave. It was like you could take care of a family member. I'd like to see it even more for like pets and stuff. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but some people love their dog like a child.
You'd like to see paid family leave for pets.
I would, yeah, because like I'm someone who had a pet and he had to have surgery, and you got to make sure that little butt licker doesn't eat it,
Okay,
eat
well,
his
you
foot
know
or
what?
something.
You've convinced me. I'm voting for Glenn Youngkin. Thank you very much.
This is Joe Biden's America, my
This is
friend.
Joe Biden's America. Paid family leave for chihuahuas.
Yeah, I it's tough, man. It's I try to just be always optimistic and looking forward. I think we're gonna get a lot done with this budget reconciliation bill in the end because a lot of people don't even know what's in it, and I do think there's some pretty
Yeah, I mean,
innovative stuff in
$550 billion for climate, which is actually only down from 600. So that means it's
there. Yeah,
actually. Hmm?
and I think we have a chance, believe it or not, to pick up a seat or two in the Senate next year. I mean, Pennsylvania, Joe Biden won it by 100,000 votes. Pat Toomey, the Republican, is retiring. We're not running against an incumbent. We've got a strong candidate. If Connor Lamb ends up getting the nomination, Wisconsin, we won, and so there's a chance we could win there. I suck on the hopium, my friend. I look at what's possible. Now, if we win a seat or two, we negate Joe Manchin, and we don't have to worry about fighting with him. But right now, we've got a 50-50 split Senate. We have a 3-seat advantage in the House. It's not like we have some huge mandate from the American people to just go crazy. We kind of are like we're told by the American people, you guys got to work with each other and figure it out.
I do agree with that, and I do agree we do need to do some stuff just legally on a bipartisan basis. I guess for me, it's just that with such a small majority, we need to use every tool at our disposal to get done what we can. And we're not even using all those tools at our disposal. Because
let me ask you.
Yeah.
Why do you think we lost today? If you had to narrow it down to one sentence.
To one sentence?
Like, why do you think we lost? Not why did they win? What do you think we did that cost us? Do you think it's like Manchin and the moderates? Okay, but okay, not one sentence, but what do you think it really boiled down to?
We let the suburbs go by not making. I'm trying to think of. Okay, not one sentence. Okay, I would say number one. His statement on schools and parents having to say absolutely terrible. Just made himself an open target in that respect. Number two, Biden's approval rating is down, and that obviously is going to have an impact on him. Definitely when we have such nationalized politics and Biden is making speeches for the guy. Three, we lost the suburbs with Trump not on the ticket. There was a lot of people, me included. I work for 21st Century Democrats. We just released a study talking about how we think the suburbs could be there's a decent chance that it could be a temporary gain when we had them in 2020. I think that our study has been shown to be true tonight in a lot of ways. I think that a lot of it probably also has to do, of course, with with education and the fact that the Republicans somehow were able to make themselves the education candidates, even though the school boards, even though the teachers unions despise them and they have a long history of defunding public schools because they turned the classroom into a culture war battle instead of a teaching battle. And that is something that put us on the back foot, and we didn't have a proper response to that.
Yeah, fair enough. And we didn't have the same turnout as in 2020. But I knew it was going to go down. But
Virginia should be a Democrat-leaning state, and the fact that there was a similar amount of Trump to Biden voters at the polls is a problem.
Yeah, well, I think that they're energized right now for all the things you said. I do find it shocking how quickly they became the education party because they were the ones who were fighting to get their kids back in our schools, right? I guess they were really thirsting for that CRT, that they were dying to get kids back in school so quickly. But
they're excited for the CRT, yeah.
Yeah, now they complain about it, right? Look, I think we lost because we couldn't get together as a party and we were fighting in public for the last month. And people, they voted for us to get stuff done. And they're asking, where are you on these big issues we care about? And here we are just punching each other over infrastructure. And I know people are cheering on each side that they love and saying, yeah, do this, do that. But in the end, we need to come together and we need to govern. And I think we can. I think this is going to be a wake-up call for both sides. I do want to say one thing positive.
I will agree with you that I do think that us holding up the infrastructure and spending bill probably did. I don't know if it would have gotten us over the top, because if it's a 1 to 2 point, then I do think it could have. I do think there's another contributing factor.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be like a 1 or 3 point lead at the most for Youngkin, which still is troublesome because, like you pointed out, Biden won it by 10 points. We should
So do
still
we
be
both
winning.
agree
Though
that this is do we at this point I'm pretty ready to say I think it's over. Do you think it's over?
I think it's over based on
Okay.
what I've seen, but we heard a pundit on NBC here say
Again,
that
I mean,
look,
it was for
things
me.
can flip still.
I mean, it could, but I mean, I know Fairfax pretty well. I know Loudoun County pretty well. The fact that those numbers are the way they are, even if they still went Democrat, is too concerning for me. And the fact that the numbers we need to make up to be able to actually flip this, we're not getting those numbers now. It would take some massive swing for us to take this. I will say there's one thing in the back of my head, and that has to do with mail-in ballots. So we all know the Republican Party has now declared itself to be against mail-in ballots, basically for whatever dumb reason, right? Which I do think, I honestly think it's something that's going to hurt the Republican Party long term, because mail-in ballot, having as many ways for your supporters to vote for you is the best way possible for you to win. And they're cutting off one of their major paths to do that. And so mail-in ballots are historically and famously the ballots that get counted last and come in last. And that's why a lot of Republicans who didn't understand how elections work on the internet saw like bumps towards the end for Democrats and was like, what are you talking about? And of course the bumps were even more severe because Democrats were worried about going in to vote in person because of COVID, while Republicans were less worried about it. And so they did, and Trump campaigned specifically against mail-in ballots. So there is a possibility that a reason why this is looking so bad at the moment is due to the mail-in ballots. Is that a possibility? Do you agree with me?
I think that there's like 800,000 left of early voting and mail-in votes or something. I don't know, but I just look.
But I think it's over. They were looking, probably.
Yeah, they were even looking through the rural counties and showing how we're down like 5% from what Northam got in 2017. So even in the rural counties, like we took a little beating, and that added up. They said it was death by 1,000 cuts on NBC. So it's kind of true. But there's some interesting things to talk about though too. I won't keep you forever, but Glenn Youngkin distanced himself from Donald Trump. And so what does that say to other Republicans out there? Hey, here's the winning strategy. You got to distance yourself from Trump. And so you think Trump's going to react well to that? And Trump's not going to give up his crown that easily. He's on a mission to sink all those people who are against him. So what kind of chaos is that going to cause in the Republican Party? And then secondly, there's no discussion of election fraud. I feel like you mentioned that the other party doesn't even agree we won. That wasn't even a talking point in this. Now, you could say that's because Glenn Youngkin was ahead in the polls and they didn't have to worry about it, but you're not hearing talk about election fraud. I think that's a really good sign for all of us as Americans. Like, I feel like we might have turned a corner on this election fraud.
I don't know if that's necessarily true because Glenn Youngkin at multiple points during this campaign, he's talked about the need to have election audits. Now, he did acknowledge that Joe Biden is the rightfully elected president. I do think that's because he's a Republican running in Virginia, and we have seen the shift of Virginian suburbs towards the Democratic Party. A lot of it has to do with the people and other. I don't need to get into specifics, but he still went for the old route of the audits. It feels a little bit like Liz Cheney. Who's like, yes, Biden obviously won, but I'm going to support all the same repressive anti-voter policies as all the other Republicans anyway. So, I mean, rhetorically, I guess you could say Glenn Youngkin's better. But when it comes down to electoral principle, when it comes down to the policies he's going to implement around campaigns, I don't know. And since this is one of the few chances left Republicans are possibly going to have in Virginia at power if current voting trends continue in Virginia, right? And so there is a possibility to take advantage of this to try to implement more of these anti-voter policies while they're in office, which that also does concern me.
But I think they've shot themselves in the foot down in Florida, for example, where Trump only won by less than 3% last year. They built a machine on mail-in voting for 20 years down there in Florida. And just because Trump made all this noise this year, they start changing stuff. So they just completely flipped the script on all those poor old people, those sunbirds down there. And I think the Republican Party hurts themselves with some of this anti-voting laws that they're passing, especially in places like Florida. So if they want to play that game in Virginia, I think nothing gets Democrats more motivated than anti-voting stuff. Look what happened in Georgia. That all was centered around voting rights, and Stacey Abrams and the crew came through, and Next thing you know, we got 2 Democratic senators. So I'm just always looking for the positive.
And man,
you know?
and we can never forget Trump calling down the Secretary of State in Georgia, whose poll numbers plummeted in response to this, and said, "Find me the votes to win." Secretary of State, not, I guess, literally being a dictator, said, "I can't do that, Mr. President," and that was all it took. That was all it took for his reputation to be tarnished forever in the Republican Party. Now, the General Assembly of Virginia is still going to be a Dem majority, as far as I'm aware, right? So it's gonna be like a less. It's kind of gonna be kind of like Maryland, actually. In my state, we have a Republican governor in a very Democratic state. Just hopefully, like in our state, we're hoping that Larry Hogan is nothing more but like a quick blurb in the time zone of Democratic control. Hopefully that's gonna be the same thing in Virginia.
Yeah, there's only so much they can do. But we're talking anti-mask executive orders and all the nonsense we've seen in Texas and Florida, more specifically Florida, rallying people against vaccine mandates. But thankfully, I think the pandemic's starting to get into our rearview mirror. I mean, we're down to 1,300 deaths a day, 70,000 cases. And like I said, only 13% people in exit polls said the coronavirus was their number one issue. So I think Biden has just taken on some tough stuff and getting us out of Afghanistan. People are going to be really thankful for that a year from now, right? Our longest war ever. I mean, that's going to be a big selling point. And having the pandemic behind us, I think a lot of these economic problems will be gone this time next year. I don't think gas prices will be where they are. I don't think the supply chain will be as messed up it is. I don't think inflation will be anywhere it is. The Fed is already talking about cracking down on inflation. So I don't think we face the same environment that we have right now next year.
God, I'm hoping you're right. I'm just worried because I think it 100% depends on the Biden administration's performance moving forward. If we're able to get those the drug price limitations over the line, like it seems like we might be able to do. If we ended up, even though the odds of this happening now are small, adding dental and vision benefits to Medicare. If we end up getting paid family and medical leave for new parents, because paid family medical leave polls at 70% support, only 20% opposition, allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices at 72% to 15%, adding dental and vision, dude, 82% support, 11 oppose. I mean, that is almost a universal policy, and these are the things that are being opposed by Manchin, Cinema. These are the things that are being held up. Things that if we were able to go on the national stage and say, we finally did this, because these we've been talking points we've debated for years, we can probably like shake off a lot of the do-nothing Democrat vibe. But, I mean, there's only so much you can do when you have 2 senators. And not even only them. There's a lot of them, I think, also that would oppose this, but are a lot more quiet and are just letting them take the heat, if we're being completely honest. But 2 who are willing, because the other ones I don't think are willing to crucify themselves in public and would fall under pressure. These 2 just have seemed to be unwilling to do so at all.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, if you look at how many senators voted against the $15 minimum wage amendment Bernie proposed in the American Rescue Plan, I think it was 8. There's, Chris Coons, there's Tester, there's a bunch of them. There's even Angus King up in Maine, the independent. But the Medicare drug negotiating of prices is happening. Biden announced it on Twitter today. It is a done deal. It's not for all drugs, and
that's
I think
good. That's 82%. 82%. That's good.
And capping insulin at $35, which was a big thing for Bernie.
That is such a... If we... Look, an insulin cap... Being able to go on a stage and say, we lowered the prices of insulin in this country. We capped the prices. That is gonna... Yep. That is great. That is unironically great. Because there's so many people who have to live off of insulin that are going to be like, oh, wait, my insulin price, they just plummeted. What happened?
Yep.
This happened. Well, that's great. And then if we get drug prices on top of that, God...
We are. It's a done deal. I'm telling you, it's happening.
Those are 2 good.
And then
there's just so much more. We just almost had. I'm just.
We're gonna get it. Look, Dylan, this is what I always say. Well, first of all, the Medicare benefits that Bernie was fighting for, it sounds like he's gonna get hearing in the end. Though Manchin's making some noise, it sounds like Bernie's saying, "This is my red line." So people are gonna get like an $800 voucher.
Was in the Senate just showing people the polling numbers on this stuff. Just like, really, you run a vote this way?
There's been a lot of like arm grabbing and like heated debates on the floor because that's where they run into each other. But yeah, it sounds like people are going to get at least hearing like an $800 voucher a year and then like free one free appointment, maybe able to get it over the counter instead of having to go to a doctor. So I think
heard about the
something's going
child
to
tax
happen
credit.
there.
What happened with the child tax credit? I heard something about
The,
I don't know what's permanent, but I heard something's permanent around that.
no, the last I heard, they took it from permanent to just extending it for 1 year, which I think is okay because
They're
2
kicking the
years
can
of the
down
extended.
road.
Yeah, they're hoping for future Congresses to extend it, and that's honestly what Bernie did when he went from 6 trillion to 3.5 trillion, now down to 2 trillion. He basically kept all the programs and just said we'll have them shorter. But basically, I think it's going to be another year of the extended child tax credit. So now you have people for 2 years getting $300 a month. I think that's a game changer, and they can run on that next year and say you don't vote for us, you're going to lose this. So that's one thing right there.
Gosh. But I mean, all I'm saying is that if things stay as they are, 2022 is not going to be a time for celebration. We need to get these stuff over. We need to get this stuff over the line, and I'm hoping that tonight, even though we've crucified the populace of Virginia and part of the DMV tonight, right? My brothers and sisters in Fairfax, God bless you. Us, even though we've crucified Virginia tonight on the altar, hopefully this could be a wake-up call for people, and this will be something where Joe Biden is able to call in some detractors, say, look what happened tonight. We need to push hard now, or you're going to lose your job in a few months. And you're going to lose your job in a few months. God, man.
Yeah. I think it's a huge wake-up call. I think it's a kick in the pants for a lot of people. There's
I mean,
a lot of people out there
I'm worried about Warnock. I really am.
Well, that is our toughest race next year is Warnock, but he's doing great. He's raising a ton of money, and look at the candidate he's running against, Herschel Walker, who has like had violent episodes he blames on like multiple personalities. I mean, the guy's a total mess. So it's a gift from God.
It is true, but he also we've seen but to be fair, we also were like, well, Trump's crazy. He's a maniac. Don't worry about it. He's gonna be a joke, and then he won. So I think having another celebrity who seems like a whack job running as a Republican maybe should not be dismissed at face value.
Yes, I do agree, but I think people saw 4 years of Trump, and Biden got
Also,
81 million votes.
Have you seen the New Jersey
Sleepy
numbers?
Joe.
They're making me panic.
They're starting to tighten, but there's still a lot of votes. And New Jersey's pretty solid blue, so I'm not worried about
my prediction at the start of the night was a Young can win, and then New Jersey stays blue. That was my prediction at the start of the night. So
yeah, New Jersey's a lot bluer than Virginia.
Oh yeah, a lot bluer. Not even. It just has a history of deciding to go through little Republican phases when it comes to its gubernatorial races.
I see Vaush jumped in your chat.
Yeah, I saw Vaush was in there. Vaush video.
Vaush, come chat with us, Vaush. You want to get Vaush in here too?
I don't know if I want that guy in here. What does he know about politics?
The werewolf lover himself?
Yeah. I think I should disavow.
It's up to you. I don't care.
If he
I
wants
always love chatting with you. Yeah, I always love chatting politics with you, Dylan.
Oh, of course. Of course. Oof. I wanted to ask you a question.
Yeah.
I was going to talk about this later in stream, but I think now's a good time. I think we've got a big problem in politics. And I think that big problem is specifically in Twitch politics is the people in our... Oh, Vaush wants to come on. Bro, let's add him.
You want to add him or want me?
I'll add him. And you know what?
Okay.
I think my criticism might slightly apply to Vaush. So.
Ooh, let's go.
Hey, you too, IRI.
I'm part.
You might be. I don't know.
Okay. I'm part of drama. Here we go.
Possibly.
Let's do this.
Hey, Vaush, how's it going?
Oh God, don't tell me I've been roped into blood sports and I'm just here to innocently discuss the electoral results.
Look, why didn't you get the werewolf lobby out in Virginia, man? What the fuck?
You know, I don't think Virginians are ready for that kind of good shit, you know? They seem to me like they have borderline medieval tastes on these sorts of things. Just not ready.
Yeah, I mean, it's all this talk about CRT. They're not ready for CDT, you know? Critical dog theory.
I genuinely don't understand how this is a hot take. I swear to God, whenever I go on Twitter, everyone wants a gigantic werewolf mommy dom GF. I have no idea how this is suddenly controversial. Is it because I only follow like the gays on Twitter, but Twitch has a lot of straight people? I have no idea. Not to
Wow.
suggest you're none. Okay.
What do you think of my idea of paid family leave for pets as well? Take care of your pets.
I think that's based as shit. In fact, I think that's the only kind of paid leave we should have.
Jesus Christ.
Hell
This,
yeah.
this sounds so silly.
Oh, real? Oh, does it? Okay, I'll reflect on my values then. My apologies. I didn't mean to cheapen this discussion with silly questions
Yeah,
and
silly
answers.
questions and silly answers from a silly man.
What
Ugh.
what are your thoughts on tonight's results, Vosh? What do you think? I don't know if you heard Dylan and I rapping about it.
No, I heard a little bit of it. I was flipping through Twitch channels while working out earlier, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like my take's gonna be pretty standard, right? The Democrats they haven't really been able to coalesce around a strong message or reach out to the voters in a way that I think will resonate with them. I feel like the Republicans are always better at this because even if they can't get shit done, they're really, really good at giving their voters the impression that they're trying as hard as they can to get shit done. Whereas with Democrats, it's like, you have some passionate advocates, but for the most part, the party is just fucking terrified of moving too far away from the center or too far away from the progressive left. Like they're petrified. It's like every Democrat thinks that they're balanced on a dental floss width bridge. Um, and if they
Yeah.
move even slightly to the left, they'll like fall off into the abyss. I don't know.
I just got a Republican in my chat. Loyal Logic. Well, he would call himself an independent, but I do know he sometimes sides with Republicans. Now they're talking about paid leave for pets. What is this? Am I the only one on Twitch that's gonna stand against this nonsense?
Oh, with paid leave for pets. Well, you don't have a little dog that you or like cat you want to like. What if they have a little veterinary appointment? What do you want?
They pull themselves up by their paws and bring themselves to the vet.
One day
Wow.
we'll have in-house veterinarian work. All right, don't waste my time here on memes. This is pretty fucked up, isn't it? Though, like really.
Yeah, this is terrible. I'm in Maryland. I live in the DMV, which is definitely going to be affected by this. I think that this personally is an indicator of what will happen if we don't change our strategy or messaging and how we approach politics on the national level and on the local level when it definitely comes to the school board nonsense going forward. Because I think a lot of it, I don't think the Democrats are ready for what happened when it comes to education in Virginia, what happened when it came to Loudoun County and the school board nonsense. Because Loudoun County, we won Loudoun County in 2020 by 10 more points than we won it tonight. We
This is that
almost
cock
lost
and
Loudoun
ball
County.
nonsense, right?
Yeah,
The CRT.
this
Yeah.
is it's not only the CRT, but that has to do specifically with that one case of the person in the skirt in the bathroom, the sexual assault case,
I
and
think I
people
heard
trying to
about that.
pin
I didn't
people
even
tried to pin
cover
that
it.
on the trans community, even though there's no evidence the person was trans in question. Just absolutely just nonsensical. And I think for me, the biggest things, as I said before you were in here, is I think it shows, number one, Biden's not popular at the moment, and I think that affected the outcome. Two, Democrats got comfortable. 46% of the people who voted today voted for Joe Biden. 46% of the people who voted today voted for Donald Trump, even though Biden won the state of Virginia by a decent amount, indicating that a lot of Democrats didn't turn out either because they were unmotivated or they felt unthreatened. Both of cases, not great for us. I think we're failing when it comes to the culture war, when it comes to combating right-wing talking points, definitely when it comes to local school board elections, and a lot of people on the local level will be able to get motivated by like organizations headed by a lot of these I don't know what to call. I don't want to call them right-wing ghouls, but I'll just call them right-wing ghouls when it comes to these.
It's a fair descriptor.
When
Yeah.
it comes to specifically some of the stuff pushing the theories on CRT
thing-
being the biggest issue of our time.
It really does take like a spectacular political party. Only the Democrats could, on almost every individual issue they push for, pull better than the alternative and still somehow not win consistently on a national or state level in like otherwise purple areas. It's really like it's truly spectacular. I think Honest to God, like maybe this is like a fucking LARPy Twitter take or whatever, but I think that the Democratic establishment needs to understand that we live in an era of populism, an era of unprecedented, at least within recent memory, labor strikes, and they need to commit like strongly to a message. The idea that like Biden is a competent, quiet leader who will keep his thumbs up and steer the boat gently is not anything that's like going to motivate people. Biden was voted for in large part because he wasn't Trump. Electability was the main thing that people chose him as their candidate for, not because they cared about his message, electability. But we're not running against Trump anymore, certainly not in the midterms.
So
We have to focus on having an identity outside of opposing the worst possible outcome for this country.
So I'm part of 21st Century Democrats. I'm political consultant for the organization. Part of my jobs was to go through a recent study we did on specifically on the Democrats and where they lost and gained votes in a lot of the industrial heartland of this country, like parts of like upstate New York, Ohio, Minnesota, like these types of areas. And what we found in the last 20 years, we have lost tons and tons and tons and tons of voters in areas that are highly reliant on mid-sized and small-sized factory towns, towns that are basically heavily reliant on manufacturing economies. They have shifted towards the Republicans. And the reason we were able to win in 2020, despite massive losses that we have yet to make up, and I think we need to make up, was because of the suburbs. And the suburbs were pretty anti-Trump. And that's what delivered us in 2020. And with Trump not on the ticket in the Virginia gubernatorial race, Democrats were not motivated. And that's why we had 46 of the people who voted today voted for Joe Biden, and 46 of the people who voted today were people who voted for Donald Trump, giving Glenn Youngkin an easy out of the Trump question, even though Terry McAuliffe on every turn tried to pin Donald Trump on Youngkin. He did his best to connect the two. He was endorsed by him, but it wasn't enough to get people in the suburbs to come out for Terry McAuliffe.
Yeah, it's not enough on its own, you know? I've said this before because like I understand that like Biden can't snap his fingers and get everything done. I know he can't control Mansion Cinema. I know that the system isn't gamed towards radical instant change. But what Biden and other Democrats can do is affect the kind of fiery political advocacy that Trump was always much better at. That's why people supported Trump. No Republicans supported Trump because Trump was politically effective. Nobody gave a fuck about Trump's political effectiveness. What they cared about was the fact that Trump, if he cared about something, you know, regardless of whether it was a sincere care, you know, if he claimed to care about something, he would talk about it nonstop. He would campaign around the country. He'd bring it up at every speech. He would denounce people who didn't agree with it. And that may not be the greatest way to reach across the aisle, which, by the way, Biden, how's that working for you elsewise? But it is a really, really good way of firing up your base. And you need something to stand on outside of, you know, the promise of competence, because competence is meaningless when the direction of this country is controlled by two groups, one of which is competent and the other which is psychotic. Competence doesn't win that. Having the stronger grip does. So
Well,
I really hope they can like shore this up or like address, you know what I mean?
Dude, I'm looking
I
at
do
these.
know
I'm looking at these Fairfax numbers, man. Fairfax is like near DC. People who live in Fairfax work in DC. It has over 11 million people in it. 65% to 35%. This is much worse than what we had in 2020. My God, man.
Well, it's a clapback at who's in power, but I do agree with you, Vaush, that we need more. And we ran on COVID extremism. Basically, it worked in the California recall by saying Larry Elder's can be like Trump, anti-mask, anti-vaccine mandate. The problem is that the pandemic is behind us to some degree now. Only 13% of people, according to exit polls, voted based on the coronavirus. So we need to have a bigger message. We got a little screwed with our negotiations for the infrastructure bill. Imagine if we had that infrastructure bill done 3 weeks ago.
Oh,
I think things would be a lot better.
yeah. It's the way they talk about it too, man. It's like what I don't understand. Like why doesn't Joe
I
Biden,
just
why don't
checked. It
Democrats,
was a
why don't they
5-point
speak
drop.
fire
Sorry, it
against
wasn't that
Republicans?
much, but it
Why
was
aren't
enough
they screaming from
for
the
it to be
hilltops?
impactful,
We are the
considering there's over
pro-family
1 million
party.
people
The
in the county.
Republicans want you to work until you're buried. The Republicans want your children to work from 14 on, never getting a break, never seeing their kids. We want you to spend time with your family. There are 27 rhetorical angles they could take on this, but the most we get is this paternalistic smile and nod. We want to make things better for you, Jack, you know? But that's not enough. It's just it's frustrating because like I know
Northern-
I
ultimately
hear
like
you.
because they're afraid
Northern won
because
with
of course if they
65%.
go too fiery
Or
with
fa-
that, they don't
okay.
want like a
So it's
radically
just a
left-leaning
presidential
base
election.
because that is what language
So
like
it's just a
that leads
governorships.
to.
We just do
The more
worse than
economic
Fairfax. What the
populism you
fuck?
fuel, the more likely it is that a Bernie type will win the next time. Republicans don't have to worry about that. They can spit fire. They can signal QAnon. They don't give a fuck if the next guy is crazier than Trump. That as long as the corporate donors continue to get their tax cuts, they do not give a shit what happens to this country. That is the only fucking thing they seem to care about. And they'll permit anything that doesn't interfere with that. But with Biden, they're concerned. So I think ultimately it's that. They need to be called out for their fear of unintentionally enabling us because that's keeping them from winning. And it's hurting not just lefties, but like every American who doesn't want to live in a dirt pit.
Well, I agree. I mean, that's the beauty of being a conservative. All you have to do is say, look at these crazy people over there. I mean, you say one guy in a dress walks into a bathroom and you get 10% increase in your voter turnout.
That's their whole fucking election. Yeah, they
That's
don't have
literally
to
what it
try. It's
was.
easy mode.
That's
God.
all it is.
Sorry,
But
I'm
that's the
sorry for talking
challenge.
so much. I'm just
Yeah, I went on a I drove up to well, I actually they Ubered me. I went up to this right wing show in DC, actually in partnership with Al Jazeera that they had me on called Rightly, and I was on there and I was talking, and it was a really great show overall. But one thing that seemed to really be like a big issue for them was they talked about CRT, and they talked about CRT a lot, and I just basically said it was a boogeyman, and like just tried to talk about, well, let's talk about education this way. And the CRT seemed to be like a real sticking issue, that this is a real thing that is happening. And it felt like in that conversation that there needed to be this point that they needed to not prove to me, but like they were just so adamant about how real it was that it's being taught on the local levels. And I didn't really want to engage in that debate, so I tried to shift it into how do we teach about race in local communities. But I think CRT, even though for a while we saw it fall off as a talking point, we saw a huge spike and we saw it fall off. I think tonight is going to make CRT like part of the Republican strategy guide for 2022. CRT, we're going to see that shit in every state and city election, state and county election across this country. We're going to see it.
It was a huge winning issue tonight, and it came out of nowhere. This is definitely going to be the issue of the 2022 midterms. I don't see it going away anytime soon. But I do see the economy improving. I do see gas prices
Fairfax
coming
County
down. I see Joe Biden's approval rate going up. I see inflation going down. So I don't think we're in the same environment this time next year as we are right now.
Maybe, but we should shore up our bets as much as we can, right? I mean, there are just some key issues that Democrats are really incompetent on politically, not in terms of their policy necessarily, but in the way they push for them. Like, I don't know how much reality really matters when it comes to some of these battles, right? We just need a counter narrative. I don't know how much you can move Republicans over on the CRT stuff, like they would ever fucking listen to Biden or a local representative or anything like that. But you just need something to get fiery over. The people who didn't vote for the Democrats in the elections today are not going to vote Democrat in the midterms because gas prices go down. They need to feel like they're part of some extraordinary movement, either against something terrible or for something wonderful.
I'll give you something, Vaush.
Yeah?
Oh, sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but when you're done, I've got something for you. Abortion.
Yeah, hit me.
They're going to vote. The Supreme Court's going to make a ruling by June on this Mississippi 15-week ban. Nothing gets Democrats more riled up than overturning Roe v. Wade right before the midterms.
True. I do think abortion is one of the big things.
Hold on. America support.
Well, I can tell you in Virginia, we actually
60-40? What are the numbers on that?
In Virginia specifically,
I don't have it in front of me.
Oh, no,
they're also voting.
Wait, in Virginia, actually, they had a poll that shot up on screen. It showed that the majority of Virginians obviously like support legal abortions, and it was like only like 37% of the state who wanted it to be illegal. So if you're talking about like a state where I think that could have been made an issue, definitely since the Republican of tonight has ties to the pro-life group, pro-life organization, which ultimate goal is eventually to overturn Roe v. Wade. If you want to talk about a culture war issue Democrats can dominate on, if we're gotta do the culture war, abortion is one of those things. But I wouldn't even call it a culture war issue, even though it's considered one. It's a health issue, but it's considered culture war.
Oh, I guess we'll see. It seems like the majority of Americans only favor abortion's legality under certain circumstances, but the polling is vague. I mean, what does that mean? Like only first 2 trimesters or only in rape and incest? It's not very helpful. I don't know like what direction all this is going to take. I just know that like we keep like every time the Republicans win, it's because they have a strong message, and every time the Democrats don't, it's because they don't. So we need to shore things up on that, and it won't be enough to just constantly go back and forth on this decades-old abortion issue. Like we need to demand more from the Democratic establishment than just congratulations on holding
Now,
the position was considered standard like 50 years ago,
now
right?
we can say though, since the Republicans look like they're gonna win tonight, and New Jersey is still looks like a tight race, we'll figure out that in a little bit.
Oh, please God, let that go
God, that
blue.
it needs to go blue.
I think it will, but
Yeah, I do too, but it's the fact that it's close right now is concerning to me. But I do think once we get more data from Newark, I think we should be fine. Um, I think this finally proves, and we'll probably see the last of anybody challenging if elections are rigged or fraudulent in this country, because obviously Republican won, so I think it's over, right? That's over. That's done. Never again. Never again.
You know, goddamn well they're just going to say that like Q worked with Trump to silently assassinate the deep state Democrat pedophiles that were rigging the election of Virginia
For like
and New
30
Jersey.
minutes during this election, there was a delay in Fairfax, and everyone was like, rigged! Immediately.
Yep.
There was like 40,000, 50,000 tweets. It immediately started trending on Twitter.
Well, but
Cheating. They're
that's
cheating in
good.
Fairfax just because there was a delay. No evidence.
It's good for internet points, though. If I was on the right, I'd be tweeting that garbage too, because you get a bunch of points.
I should start doing
You think
that.
these people care about
Fuck the
our
internet
democracy
porn.
or anything?
Absolutely.
These people
They-
don't care about our democracy. They won't care about internet points.
Yeah. Well,
To be
anyway,
fair, internet points are fun, though.
I'm sorry for running in here and just being negative. It's you know, it's a rough and tumble night. I can only be on for a bit. I have to go run and eat, and then there's some work I have to do before I do part of Zan's charity stream. He's playing Phasmo, which I would play anyway because it's super fun. But good luck with this. I'll probably pop in while I'm eating because you know, good coverage and all that. Thank you both.
Dope. You have a good one.
Nice chatting with you.